This is Heaven Hill's latest unicorn whiskey, and guess what? It's not a bourbon. Heaven Hill is well known for some great, affordable, and readily available bourbons and rye whiskeys. Historically, Heaven Hill has also released highly allocated whiskeys utilizing some more of their non-traditional mash bills like malt whiskey, corn whiskey, and yes, wheat whiskey. Now, starting in 2022, Heaven Hill launched the Heritage Collection, which focuses on just one of the distillery's 6 mash bills that is usually aged for much longer than other Heaven Hill releases, but minus any secondary maturation. Which brings us to today's sample review of the Heaven Hill 2025 Heritage Collection 19-year wheat whiskey. That's right, we got a sample. Let's try it, review it. Stay tuned. It's the Mash and Drum. What's up, folks? I'm Jason C, and welcome back to the Mash and Drum Whiskey Room. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and help me keep climbing to 100,000 subscribers. So as I mentioned before, this year's release is a straight wheat whiskey made from a mash bill of 51% wheat, 37% corn, and 12% malted barley, which is the same recipe they used for Bernheim Original. Now, on top of being 19 years old, this release is made up of 277 barrels produced in August and September of 2005 that were aged on the 5th and 6th floors of Rickhouse Y. Like previous Heritage Collection releases, the 2025 edition comes in a special box and includes specific information about the production date, the mash bill, and warehouse location right on the label. Now, this will be available in March for an SRP of $300. All right, so I have not cracked this open yet, so eager to try this one. So these Heritage Collection bottles have been pretty interesting over the course of the last few years. The 2022, the 17-year bourbon was my bourbon of the year when it came out. That was probably one of the best modern Heaven Hill releases I've ever had. Then on top of that was the 18-year bourbon, and we had a 20-year corn whiskey, which is basically high-aged mellow corn. Now we're seeing this right here with their wheat whiskey. So let's dive in and see what we get here. The nose on this is beautiful. You get that really nice Heaven Hill, rickhousey oak profile. I love that. Man, oak, honey, spice, heavy baking spice here. You know, it's funny, as many people I've talked to within the industry, I've never really gotten in depth about wheat whiskey, how it ages over time. So this is kind of an interesting release for me. Generally, when you think of wheat whiskey, you don't really think of big high ages. So trying something at 19 years is pretty interesting. I get a lot of toffee in here too. There's a really nice, rich, like toffee, caramel, almost buttery type of profile it has. It's obviously pretty light, being about 100 proof. This is nice. This is definitely more than I expected. Not really sure what I expected from a high-age wheat whiskey, but let's give it a try. Here we go. So first impression here, it kind of matches the nose for me. A lot of baking spice here. Again, cinnamon, black pepper, and definitely more spicy than I thought it was gonna be for a wheat whiskey. I thought this was gonna be really very soft and easy. And while this is only my first sip, I do feel like there's a good indication of spice happening. All right, second sip, it definitely takes you into more of a wheated bourbon place, where it does come off a little bit softer on the mid palate. However, the back of the palate, even at 100 proof, is still keeping a nice spice. I do get all those heavy layers of cinnamon. I do still think we have a really nice caramel apple note here as well. A little bit of that Heaven Hill nuttiness that I think is intertwined to the whole experience as well, which, you know, I wasn't sure if I was gonna expect to get that either. Let's go for a third sip here. Now I'm getting a lot of vanilla. A lot of vanilla on the back end of this one too. This is an interesting whiskey because it's light, yet it's bold at the same time. Because normally when you think of if I'm comparing it to the Heaven Hill 17, which is more of a very in-your-face type of bourbon whiskey, where just all the flavors just kind of attack your palate, but there is some nuance in there. There's nuance there, but without the, attacking nature that you're getting because it's only 100 proof. But I do think the flavors that it has are actually really layered, and they're quite elegant, I think, for a wheat whiskey. Again, trying a wheat whiskey at 19 years old, you just don't really come across it every day. So I love the mouth coating on this. It's extremely velvety. It just kind of glides over your palate. Yeah, I think there's a part of me that, and I think a lot of you will probably want a little bit more from this, if I'm being honest, because I do think it drinks light, but again, that's the nature of the wheat whiskey. If you're expecting this to be an in-your-face Elijah Craig barrel proof or Heaven Hill 17 type of experience, that's not what this is. But the flavors it does have, I think are actually really layered and really sweet. Another sip here. Here's the problem with this bottle. It's $300 and it is crushable because it's light, it's very, very sweet. I think a lot of people with a sweet tooth are gonna love this this whiskey. It has enough oak to make you think, okay, there's definitely some age here, but the cinnamon, the little bit of a black pepper that it has on the back end, but the way it just kind of glides over your palate, I think just kind of makes you want to keep going back to it. I do wish it had a little bit of a longer finish. I didn't really expect that with a wheat whiskey at 100 proof. But what it has, it's really good. Is it $300 good though? Man, this is really good. I like it. I thought I was gonna be really underwhelmed by this, honestly, guys. I was going in like, 19-year wheat whiskey. How good can it be? It's good. And I think what Heaven Hill in this bottle has going for it is the fact that where the hell are you gonna get a 19-year wheat whiskey? But overall, this is a really, really good whiskey. The fact that it could carry this much flavor and a good amount of oak in a wheat whiskey profile at only 100 proof, it's kind of amazing to me. Again, I really went in this thinking it wasn't gonna be as good as it is. All right, last sip, we'll do a final breakdown. God, I just love the texture of this. It's so creamy. So front of the palate, you're not gonna get any of those tingly, type of barrel proof effects that you're gonna get with this. What you do get is a very buttery, toffee, almost maple syrup like feel on the front of your palate. By the time it hits mid palate, that's when you kind of get your sweeter flavors. The caramel apple kind of sets in a little bit, and then it kind of just hits into that baking spice finish. I'd say the finish on this is probably more along the lines of short, borderline medium, depending on your palate. But for me, is this a $300 whiskey? That's a good question. Let me think about this and we'll do a quick final breakdown. All right, final breakdown on the new Heaven Hill 19-year wheat whiskey from their Heritage Collection here in 2025. Price for this one, $300. As far as resale market, these will probably get close to $600, $700, $800, maybe even $900, depending on where you're looking and what store you're at. Availability, it's gonna be limited. Now, in terms of value, this is probably the hardest question I had when it comes to doing this final breakdown, because I think on one hand, I think for $300, most people would want more of an in-your-face experience. However, I think for what you're getting for $300 is something that it's really not out on the market. You're not gonna really find it anywhere else as far as being a 19-year-old wheat whiskey. I know it's 100 proof, so value for this at $300. I know it's expensive, but I am actually really enjoying this for what's in the bottle. I really, like I said, I keep saying it. I thought it was gonna be a little bit underwhelmed, but this is really, really good. So for $300 for a 19-year wheat whiskey, I'm gonna say it's even. Which brings me to most I'd pay. What's the most I'd pay for this? It's gonna be $300. If I could get this at retail, I'm buying it all day long. I don't think it has enough of what I love as far as like the power and the punch and the long finish to overpay for it. And I think that's key for a lot of people watching, because if you have a chance to buy this and you're expecting this to be some in-your-face whiskey like the Heaven Hill 17-year, that's not what this is. But the flavors it does have, I think for a wheat whiskey at 19 years old, I'm really impressed with, especially the velvety mouthfeel. So if I could find it at $300, that's the most I'm gonna pay for it. It's gonna be retail. Alternatives for this, there is no alternative for this. And I think that goes in favor of Heaven Hill and why its price is such. So when you think about wheat whiskeys that are on the market, you have Woodford Reserve wheat whiskey, which is 90.4 proof. You can actually just go and get Bernheim, either barrel proof or wheat whiskey, which is the same mash bill this is, but a lot younger. And I'm sure there are some other craft distillers out there that have a wheat whiskey, but I guarantee they're not aged to 19 years. So as far as alternatives go, it's pretty slim pickings. And as far as recommend, is it a skip, a try before you buy, or a buy and back it up? I'd say this: if you have the extra income, you're a huge Heaven Hill fan, and you're willing to only pay $300 for it, I think it's a buy. I would not overpay for this if you can help it. I know that's really hard to say because most times bottles like this do end up on the secondary market and then we have to overpay to get it. And I totally understand that aspect of hunting these, high priced whiskeys. However, if you do have a chance to buy this at retail or close to retail, I do think you're really gonna enjoy it, especially if you like those really sweet flavors. There's a Heaven Hill DNA that runs through this, that little slight hint of nuttiness that it has with that toffee, the caramel apple, that nice little spice on the end, and the velvety mouthfeel that this has. I think it actually makes this even more impressive for being a 100 proof 19-year wheat whiskey. But like I said, if you get a chance to get this at retail at $300, it's a buy. I really do think, I actually like this better than the 18-year Heaven Hill bourbon from last year. All right, guys, well, hope you enjoyed this review for the new 2025 Heritage Collection Heaven Hill 19-year wheat whiskey. Wow, it's a lot. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, hit the subscribe button below. Please hit the like button, and if you haven't yet, find me on Instagram. Let me know down in the comments if this one was on your radar, what you thought about the tasting notes. Did you agree with my assessment, or is this something you're just completely, staying away from given the price point? Obviously, we have a little bit of a shift in the bourbon market these days, so it'd be interesting to see if anybody out there is interested in this one because of the nature of the mash bill. It's a little bit more of a rare mash bill, especially when you look on the market in those high H statements. So let me know down in the comments, and as I always say, it's not about the whiskey, it's the people you share it with. Cheers, and I'll see you next time right here on The Mash and Drum. I'm gonna crush this sample bottle.